So let me set some expectations to start with. My rather provocatively titled presentation doesn't have the answer. But I'm also probably going to finish early, so you'll get a longer break. Because some of the other technology I'm going to use, actually it'd be easy to run it in the background to collect your contributions. So there will be some questions you can access via the QR code, because I'm here today really to convince you to engage with the technology team in the technical authority and our R&D program, and to really provide a bit of help, because we need to know what questions to ask of the people we meet to support our aims and objectives as a business, and particularly yours as the capital delivery community for Track. My team, my small team, report to Robert Ampoma, the Chief Technology Officer in the Technical Authority. We're a small team, so what's important is research innovation is a team sport. We need to collaborate, partly because some of the points that were raised earlier. So we need a diverse range of thinking as we tackle some of these challenges that the three speakers before the break have very articulately set out. Also, it doesn't really matter what we do in the technical authority. What matters is what happens out on the ground, every weekend, every night. So any ideas we come up with and solutions we think we're developing, you've got to buy into them, you've got to use them. To be blunt, the regions and the supply chain need to have confidence to invest in them so that they become business as usual and not just a nice idea that sits on a shelf somewhere. And really my team need to support you in all of that activity. So we are strong allies of capital delivery across the business. Really, part of what I've done as I joined the technology team in the TA is to start questioning my own colleagues, the processes we use internally, the way we've been specifying, prioritising, delivering R&D. Because for one, we've not really invested enough of that fund in CP6 in capital works, in capital investment. John showed earlier a slide that I think roughly worked out about one in every £2 will be spent on our core renewals. I'm not so sure that we've spent one in every £2 of our R&D budget linked to the same kind of activity. So we've got a chance to change that. And also there's loads of opportunity out there, but we need to point ourselves at the right opportunities. So my team talked to DFT, we talked to our other arm's length body partners, we talked to the various sort of governmental organisations, the Catapults, Innovate UK, I'll come to that in a bit. There is funding opportunities out there to supplement the direct investment in R&D we get as Network Rail. But sometimes it's easy to be blinded by the number of those opportunities, and it takes effort to win some of that funding as well. So we've got to target the right opportunities. So just a bit more about what my team get up to. Really our core purpose is along the bottom there, which is to try and steer those technology outcomes for Network Rail so that it aligns with our business priorities and delivers that bottom line improvement in efficiency, in productivity, in safety, in train performance, in our customer experience. I've kind of highlighted a couple of bits which might be more interesting to this group here today. So part of what we do is engaging leaders around the industry. So we try and make sure we are giving the right message to senior people in those organisations outside of Network Rail. Our job is to engage you and engage leaders around Network Rail to support and to get involved with and to sponsor and to really have a firm hand on the tiller for any research innovation we do as a business. It's certainly about framing those opportunities, so looking for the opportunities to connect potential solution providers with the problem statements, with the pain points that you have in your day-to-day work. Really important, I think, that we provide that linkage, so broker those funding opportunities, broker those opportunities to help you find solutions to some of those challenges. And I think part of that is going to rely more and more in future on those strategic collaborations with some of those organisations I've talked about, with other European railways. But again, it comes back to being able to ask the right questions so we can identify the right opportunity for collaboration and partnership. And then finally, it's about promoting innovation, but supporting the wider business to develop and successfully access new ideas, new ways of working. So an area we're developing for CP7 is what I'm loosely terming innovation services. So you may have good ideas and are struggling to access some of the kind of skills and capabilities to convert that idea into a bit of business as usual. So that could be business change, it could be some upfront activity, identifying the nature of the challenge, the scale of the opportunity in that business challenge. The R&D fund or RD&I fund in CP7, for me, is there to support a lot of that kind of upfront business case generation, analytics. Are we focusing our efforts on the right problem? So rather than embarking on a £1 million technology project initially, why don't we spend 50k, 100k doing that bit of business case work, that bit of analysis to test our assumptions? So really the team's here to help. We're here to engage with you as one of the important groups of stakeholders around the business to support us all achieving those wider aims. So I thought everyone likes a bit of a quiz, so just three questions. Just three questions about our R&D for CP7. So first question, how much R&D funding do you think Network Rail has been awarded in CP7 from A to D? Any ideas, any choices from the audience? Is that B, Andrew? B, 165, okay. D, 250. Any of the takers for A or C? C, or Brian's going C, okay. Unfortunately, it's not D. We'd have loved it if it was. That's what the initial pitch was. It's actually B. So the regulator, in their final determination, agreed with a pitch we made for £165 million, which is 40% lower than CP6. So that's why we're focusing on our efforts to collaborate and partner and leverage that funding even more successfully than we've done in CP6, in a more structured way. So it's addressing our core business priorities and not just out for grabbing whatever third-party funding's around and distracting us from some of the core challenges we face. Regional funding, question mark over that. We know there are pots of money in regional funds which will align with new technology rollout and development. It could be a bit clearer in some of the submissions, but I guess that is really as much of a challenge to what we've been doing in the TA in our R&D process and the confidence that's given routes and regions in adopting some of that technology, as much as it is to routes and regions about thinking about changing the ways of working and what that means in terms of technology implementation and the costs of doing that. Okay, question 2. What does the term rural stand for? 4 choices again. Any takers on A in the room? Or B? Oh, a few on B, thank you. Any on C? That's winning the race at the moment. And anyone think it's got anything to do with D? John does. Okay, thanks, John. Of course, the answer is C. It's rail industry readiness level, and this is the railway's adaptation of technology readiness levels. The point being really that the state of readiness of a technology or the maturity of technology is not the whole answer to how successfully we can adopt it into the business. So rurals are all about the route to market, the supply chain, the demand from Network Rail and the organisation, demand from industry, as much as the maturity and confidence we can have in the technology delivering the outcome we've specified in the first place. And CP7 really is framed around, can we introduce more ideas into our research innovation pipeline that are already at a more advanced rural state, so that the funding we have is about pushing them into a first-in-class type adaptation or adoption in part of our business to give us the confidence we need and to validate some of the benefits that we expect to get, and put together essentially a playbook for how that same idea can be rolled out in other parts of our organisation or other parts of our business. And in our submission, we stated that we're aiming for about 70 million, 65, 70 million of that 165 million targeted at that kind of more advanced innovation project in CP7. At the moment, a number of the CP6 projects that are in flight, potentially fall into that category. But as part of some current reviews of spending, we're going to challenge all of those assumptions, because for me, we shouldn't be continuing something from CP6 unless one of you in this room actually owns that idea and is willing to kind of take it forward with that first-in-class funding. So strong sponsorship is what we're looking for. And finally, what do our suppliers say is the biggest barrier to them in investing in innovation? So anyone for A? Andy and a few others, thank you. Anyone for B? Hand at the back, thank you. C, standards. Thank you. And product acceptance. Loads of people, right? Yeah, Andrew, you're right. So these are the top 4 barriers to innovation as cited by our supply chain. This is from a RIA survey that they conducted a couple of times now, and these haven't really changed. So procurement cited as the biggest barrier. And this really brings me to a point about where I think our RD&I funding can be targeted going forward. CP6 has been about creating new stuff, new physical entities, whether it's a new bridge, whether it's a drone for inspecting a structure. We can target some of this funding at our processes, whether that is our contracts and procurement, whether it's our legal processes, whether it's the way we engage our supply chain in identifying these new ideas and bringing the technology to us. It's not just about creating a physical widget, gadget for the railway. We should be innovating everything we do. And for me, this is fair game. I might have to win a few hearts and minds in the TA on that one, but it's something I'm ploughing away with. Okay, so a bit about RD&I in CP7. Just a little bit of background. So this is kind of encapsulates the themes we wrote into the strategic business plan. And it is all about being financially responsible, so driving out costs from Network Rail, being more efficient, being more productive, as well as improving train performance and maintaining and improving our safety record for passengers, for workforce, and for the public. We were really pushed hard on driving returns in the control period with the investment we've got. Very, very difficult with a research program, obviously, because there's a lot of uncertainty and risk in some of the lower readiness level ideas that we want to invest in and test. But that's certainly something the regulator are looking for from us over the next 5 years and beyond. And really, it's the bottom 2 points that are key. It's got to be your R&D and innovation plan. It's not the TA's plan. If it becomes the TA's plan, we've not succeeded again. It has to be seen by asset disciplines, by functions, by routes and regions as your plan. You're steering it. Others might be delivering the work on your behalf, but you're very much setting the direction and the priorities within that plan. And that hopefully means that it's focused to the end in terms of your needs, your requirements, whether they're short, medium or long-term challenges you're trying to address. I probably better take GBR off that slide as well in future, for a couple of years. How to access the funding? I wish it was this straightforward. This is kind of what the theory is. But if Sue Millington or any of her team were in the room, they'd be shouting me down at the moment because I'll come to an opportunity in a second, but we've been trying to get some funding for a capital delivery innovation panel. And it's been, harder than it should have been to get a small amount of funding to support some new activity. But in theory, we have a track ALG that John and the regional track engineers take turns to chair, I think. Proposals go there for technical review, and then we have an R&D board that's attended by regions and functions, which does another kind of review at a portfolio level of those ideas relative to everything else that's going on. Once it's cleared those 2 hurdles, TA investment panel should be relatively straightforward, and the funding and the project should kick in. But we are heavily oversubscribed, as you can imagine. So going back a couple of steps, that discussion on priorities, whether that's at programme level for, say, track engineering or portfolio level, is where the art of this piece is based. And I'm challenging colleagues that we do need to look at our R&D board at the conversations we're having at a portfolio level, because I think sometimes we are parking some good ideas in one space and not testing those against longer term aspirations or elements of the programming in another space, and reprioritising on that basis. So there are plenty of opportunities for collaboration. These are just a selection of the organisations that my team have built some relationships with. I'll pick out a couple. I'm going to come on to UCRIN. That's the kind of collaboration of about 19 of the UK's universities that are involved in rail research. So they're top left. Bottom right, the Rail Investment Centre of Excellence. They have an innovation panel, started in June this year. This is where we're trying to get some funding from the R&D programme to provide a bit of seed corn funding for ideas that come into the Centre of Excellence panel. It's attended by regional representatives. It's got representatives from capital delivery, heads of engineering, for example. That panel has been fairly tactical up to now in terms of receiving ideas from supply chain, but we are slowly kind of changing its direction to become much more strategic, so we can start to look at where are the biggest pain points, the biggest opportunities in capital delivery for Network Rail, and then how do we target the resource in the Research and Innovation Fund and the expertise that sits in our sort of ecosystem of innovators to help us start to investigate and provide some solutions to those challenges. So that group have organised a challenge session next Monday. So that's the first step to defining some capital delivery challenge statements that can then be promoted within our supply chain and within more widely outside the kind of the conventional rail industry supply chain. The questions I've kind of posed at the end, I'm hoping, well, I will take your feedback as input into that challenge session. But irrespective of those questions I've asked, because they might not be the right questions, because I'm here today to kind of ask for your support on what are the right questions to ask, get in touch with me afterwards between now and Monday if you like. And Eric Thompson hopefully has got an invite to that session. Others you may have. But we want to make sure the questions and the challenges are shaped in the right way for track engineering at that session. But there are many more opportunities you can see. We've got some really good relationships built with ProRail and Swiss Railways as two of our sort of European counterparts. Mainly, again, discussion focused on maintenance and inspection at the moment, but there's plenty of scope to widen that discussion to capital delivery, to renewals, to enhancements. You may already have connections, in which case, let's join forces. Let's build that kind of joined up approach to some of those relationships and see if we can leverage even more benefit from them. We've also got pots of money we invest in places like the Manufacturing Technology Centre in Coventry, in UIC, in I3P, which is definitely a club that capital delivery should be part of. This is a group of construction, the supply chain as well as the clients for UK construction. We've got a great opportunity to shape the agenda at I3P. It was formed, I believe, about 3 or 4 years ago with a big burst of energy. It's lost its way a bit, like some of these things do. It's trying to find its feet again and prioritise how the clients of major construction projects in the UK get together and shape a market, define a market for some of the changes that we want to see. Again, great opportunity to kind of get involved, engage, and kind of shape our own destiny a bit in terms of what that organisation is doing. So, again, please get in touch if you're interested in getting involved or want to know more about our relationship and the opportunities to kind of work with some of these organisations. Or if you've already got those connections, happy to share what we're doing and see if we can build on top of that. So I wanted to touch specifically on UCRIN. The reason being that end of September, at the request of the Capital Delivery Heads of Engineering, we organised a conference at the Light Rail Innovation Centre in the West Midlands in Dudley. And the main purpose really was to get the Ukraine universities in the same room as some of your capital delivery colleagues across the disciplines to learn about each other. So what are the biggest pain points from a capital delivery point of view? What can the universities contribute to investigating those, providing some solutions potentially? And really, kind of a really important part of that day was afternoon workshops where groups of from across the delegates got together and started to talk about some of those issues. So the heads of engineering set out some challenge statements ahead of the day. The university's got a chance to kind of think about those and then provide some responses. And what the heads of engineering have done is kind of down-selected to a smaller number of the proposals that were generated in that afternoon, those afternoon working groups. And I thought I'd share with you how that down selection is looking, so at least you're aware of what's going on. You can got a chance to get involved, so I've identified which region or organisation is taking a lead with some of these. I think, these are very early days, so there's plenty of chance to shape the proposal in terms of the research that the universities are proposing to do, so we get the best out of it, because universities sometimes have a slightly different agenda to what we do as a major infrastructure manager. They like to get papers and PhDs and research fellows and things to bolster their organisations. So one of the themes was infrastructure, and here are the 4 ideas that have been down-selected by the heads of engineering. So I'll quickly touch on a couple of them. There was a need on the day it was felt to look at test train requirements for new electrification to authorise entry into service of those assets. So the universities have come back with an idea about using simulation and modelling combined with some lab testing to validate that simulation modelling to see if we can't challenge those standards. So it comes, I think, back to a little bit of what Stephen was saying earlier about testing some of this framework we've got. We've got new technology, we've got new research capabilities that exist today that didn't exist 20, 30, 40 years ago to start to look into some of these requirements and ultimately lead to perhaps a refinement and a better way of doing things. What else will I touch on? So the cost-effective handback speeds, something that Niall was keen to lead from Eastern Region. Again, looking at our knowledge of the capabilities of modern plant, our knowledge of the behaviour of the track, the ballast. Can we gain more confidence in terms of our construction quality versus our handback speed and look to move more of our handbacks to at or near line speed is the objective there. And I'm sure you'll have opinions on how feasible some of this is, what needs to be done, how optimistic some of what's been talked about here is, but I think it's back to that team sport thing. It's good to challenge some of these ideas and make sure that we think these are kind of our priority items and we're all working on the right kind of track here to test some of these assumptions. The next area was rolling stock, and this is where I think some of the activity strayed outside of the remit of the part of capital delivery, particularly the bottom right item about vehicles measuring infrastructure. There's a lot of work going on there elsewhere around the business. But there's more work going on to look at the ride comfort standards, look at our assumptions around track design parameters versus passenger ride comfort. Huddersfield University have got a very useful rig where they can simulate the passage of different trains over different track geometries and test the response of passengers on board that simulation rig. Already done some really helpful work in terms of group standards, and the kind of push at this event was, can we extend that and just look at in more detail at our track design and maintenance standards and potentially look to change some of those requirements for the benefit of passengers in terms of capacity and journey times. And then another item which is still to be developed a fair bit is the reduced track specification. So again, I think this is back to testing TRK 2102, the assumptions in there about specification for track construction versus track category. Are there refinements that can be made? Clearly that should involve a lot of people in this room from Routes Regions TA. So I will endeavour to keep everybody connected on how these things develop, but I'd also suggest you go and perhaps ask a few questions about what the proposed next steps are for some of this work. And then digital, we've talked a lot today about data, gaining information and insight from data. The hive mind idea is quite an interesting one. That is essentially taking things like these large language models and can we apply them to existing data sets that we have in terms of lessons learned, derogations in tracker, kind of extracting the good practice, the kind of the benefits that others have gained over the years through experience and through some painful experience potentially, and make sure that is fresh in the minds of, or easily accessible to the next round of project engineers and designers and constructors of our assets. And then I think also the integrated system level design tool set was something that a couple of people mentioned in general conversation, and about can we find ways of improving the way that we understand the effect of the design decisions on one part of the asset on the wider system. So again, interesting projects. It will be really interesting to see how far universities think they can take some of this versus handing over to parts of our supply chain or parts of the wider industry to develop more rounded and deployable solutions. So really this is where I finished the presentation, because the 6 questions are via Slido. Please give as fulsome responses as you like to those. I'd really like to know how else you think our research innovation funding can help you with some of those pain points, those challenges as opportunities in capital delivery. We have to make sure more of that fund is allocated to this part of what we do as a business. And it's definitely this team sport again. So my team are here to help. We are allies of all that you do. We may not understand it in great detail, but we were here to challenge our processes, here to challenge when people say, no, you can't have money for that, or that's not a priority, and support these initiatives, and really question that we're getting the best value possible out of our investment in R&D and our partnerships we can generate from that. So I'll leave it there. Thank you. Thanks for listening.